The FBI agent isn't watching a movie set, he's watching a rehearsal. It's 3:47 a.m. in Las Vegas, January 1960. The camera crew has gone home. The director is asleep in his suite at the Sands. The casino floor below hums with the soft clicks of roulette wheels and the murmur of gamblers who don't know when to quit. But Frank Sinatra is still in the vault. Not the fake vault they built for the film, the real one. He's asking questions, not about camera angles, not about lighting setups, about lock mechanisms, about the thickness of steel, about guard rotations, about the 17 seconds between alarm triggers. And Dean Martin stands in the doorway smoking. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't examine anything. He just leans against the frame with a cigarette between his fingers, watching Frank trace his hand along the vault door like a man memorizing a lover's face. That's what worries the agent most, because Dean Martin doesn't do anything without a reason. And when Dean Martin watches something that carefully, it means he's already decided whether he's in or out. "Forget the movie," Frank said with a smile. "Let's pull the job." The FBI agent wrote it down anyway. What happened over the next 6 weeks would fill 200 pages of classified reports, surveillance logs, wiretap transcripts, photographs taken from parked cars at 4 in the morning, and none of them would answer the only question that mattered. Were they making a movie or taking notes? To understand what the FBI was so afraid of, you have to understand Las Vegas in 1960. This wasn't the Vegas of family vacations and corporate conventions. This was the Vegas of backroom deals and unmarked graves in the desert. The casinos weren't run by corporations. They were run by men whose names appeared in FBI files alongside words like organized crime and suspected homicide. The Sands Hotel sat at the center of it all, and Frank Sinatra, the chairman, didn't just perform there. He owned part of it. His name was on the deed alongside names that made federal prosecutors nervous. Sam Giancana, the Chicago Outfit, men who solved problems permanently. J. Edgar Hoover had been watching Sinatra for nearly 40 years. The file on his desk had grown to over 2,400 pages. But watching wasn't the same as catching. And Sinatra had never given them anything they could use. Until Ocean's 11. Raymond Holt had been head of security at the Flamingo for 11 years. He had seen movie crews before. He had seen stars before. Marlon Brando had filmed a picture there in '54. Elvis had caused a riot in '56. But he had never seen anything like this. They weren't acting, he whispered to a fellow security chief over drinks at the Desert Inn. They were studying. "There's a difference, pal. An actor asks how something looks. These guys asked how it worked." The kid from Steubenville had grown up around men who planned things in back rooms. In that Ohio steel town, you learned to recognize when a joke wasn't a joke, when a smile meant danger, when hypothetically meant tomorrow night. His father had worked in the mills, but the real money in Steubenville came from the gambling houses that operated in plain sight. The kid who would become Dean Martin had seen men arrested on Monday and back at the tables by Wednesday. He understood that the line between legal and illegal was just a matter of who you knew. Frank's smile reminded him of those men. That's why Dean stopped smiling. Peter Lawford had bought the script for $10,000 in 1958, a simple heist story. 5 guys knock over 5 casinos on New Year's Eve. He thought it was just a movie idea, a vehicle for the Rat Pack. Easy laughs, easy money. But when Frank read it, he didn't see a screenplay. He saw a blueprint. January 1960, the Sands Hotel. The production schedule was designed by a madman. By day, the Rat Pack performed 2 shows in the Copa Room, the 8 p.m. dinner show, the midnight show for the high rollers. By night, they filmed until dawn, 1 a.m. call time, wrap at 5 a.m., sleep until 3 p.m., repeat. The crew complained. The director, Louis Milestone, threatened to quit twice in the first week. The studio executives sent worried telegrams about overtime costs. But Frank never seemed tired. He seemed excited. Too excited. The vault scene was scheduled for a single night of shooting. It took 3, not because of technical problems, not because of the acting, because Frank kept stopping to ask questions. How thick is this door? What's the combination mechanism? What's the delay on the alarm system? How long before security responds if someone trips the motion sensor? It wasn't a question, it was an interrogation. The prop master, a veteran of 30 films, assumed Sinatra was method acting, getting into character, understanding his role. The director assumed he was being difficult. Stars always found ways to slow down production. It made them feel important. Raymond Holt, watching from the shadows, assumed something else entirely. He couldn't forget the way Frank's fingers traced the vault door, the way his eyes measured distances, the way he nodded to himself, like a man confirming a theory. Dean didn't ask questions. He didn't examine the locks. He didn't time the guard rotations. He didn't take notes. He just watched Frank with those heavy-lidded eyes that never missed anything. Frank's shadow, Always there, always silent, and smoked, and said nothing. On the third week of filming, a set designer named Howard Paulson noticed something strange. The casino blueprints they were using for reference weren't the ones the studio had provided. They were real, actual architectural plans for the Flamingo, the Sands, the Desert Inn, stamped confidential in faded red ink, marked with handwritten notes about electrical systems and emergency exits. Paulson asked the production manager where they came from. The production manager said Frank had sourced them. Paulson didn't ask any more questions. He had worked in Hollywood long enough to know that some questions didn't have answers you wanted to hear. The studio thought they were making a heist comedy, a light-hearted romp with the biggest stars in the world, good publicity, great box office. The casinos thought they were getting free advertising. The Sands, the Flamingo, the Desert Inn, their names in lights on screens across America. You couldn't buy that kind of exposure. The FBI thought they were watching a crime in slow motion, a rehearsal disguised as entertainment, a blueprint being tested in front of cameras. But they couldn't prove intention. They couldn't explain why watching felt like witnessing. Only one of them could be right. And then, 3 days before the premiere, something happened that made the FBI close their file. Not because they found the answer, because they were told to stop looking. August 2nd, 1960. The night before the premiere. The Culpa room at the Sands. Empty. The chairs were stacked on tables. The stage lights were off. The band equipment had been packed away hours ago. Only the bar was lit, a soft amber glow that made everything look like a memory already fading. Frank poured 3 glasses of Jack Daniels. He didn't offer a toast. He didn't make a joke. He just smiled that smile. The one that made women fall in love and made men check their wallets. Frank's smile wasn't reassuring. It never was. Not to the people who really knew him. Sammy sat at the bar, nursing his drink. He looked tired. 8 weeks of shows and filming had worn them all down, but there was something else in his face. Something that looked like worry. Dean sat apart from them both, in a booth near the wall. The shadows covered half his face. His cigarette glowed orange in the darkness. The silence wasn't comfortable. It hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. "You ever think about it, Dino?" Frank asked. Dean didn't look up. Think about what? Actually doing it. For real. The room went quiet. Even the ice in the glasses seemed to stop shifting. Sammy laughed nervously. "Come on, Frank. We just spent 2 months pretending to rob casinos. I think I've had enough." But Frank wasn't looking at Sammy. He was looking at Dean, and Dean didn't laugh. He didn't play along. He didn't pretend it was funny. He couldn't pretend anymore. He just looked at Frank with those tired eyes, the eyes of a man who had seen too many jokes become crimes, too many hypotheticals become headlines, too many what-ifs become prison sentences. "We make movies, Frank," Dean whispered. His voice was so soft that Sammy had to lean forward to hear it. "That's all we do. That's all we've ever done." He put down his glass. The sound was louder than it should have been in the empty room. "Forget the movie. Let's pull the job. That's what you said when you first read the script. You were joking then." Dean leaned closer. The shadows shifted. For a moment his face was fully visible. The mask crumbled. And there was no smile there. No charm. No lazy warmth that made audiences love him. Just the hard expression of a man who had grown up in Steubenville and knew exactly what men like Frank were capable of. The kid from the steel town, staring down the chairman of the board. "You're still joking now, right, Frank?" Sinatra held his gaze for a long moment. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. And then Frank smiled. "Of course I'm joking, Dino. What do you think I am? A criminal?" He laughed. That famous Sinatra laugh, full and warm and completely convincing. Sammy laughed too, relief flooding his face. Dean didn't laugh, because Dean knew the difference between a joke and a rehearsal, and he wasn't sure which one he had just witnessed. Frank reached into his pocket and pulled out his silver lighter, the one he put on every poker table like a lucky charm, the one he clicked when he was thinking through a problem, the one Dean had seen 100 times before. He didn't light a cigarette, he just clicked it, once, twice, 3 times, then he put it away. "Premiere's tomorrow," Frank said. "Get some sleep, partner." He walked out without looking back. His footsteps echoed in the empty room, then faded to nothing. Sammy finished his drink and followed a few minutes later, muttering something about needing rest. Dean sat alone in the dark Copa room for a long time. He thought about Steubenville, about the men who joked about things they later did, about the gamblers who talked about the big score until one day they stopped talking and started doing, about the difference between wanting something and actually reaching for it. The kid from the steel town knew that line was thinner than most people thought, and Frank Sinatra had been dancing on it for years. August 3rd, 1960. The world premiere of Ocean's 11. Las Vegas had never seen anything like it. The marquees blazed with their names and letters, 10 feet tall. Searchlights swept the desert sky. Limousines lined up for a quarter-mile down the strip. The flashbulbs popped like artillery fire when they stepped onto the red carpet. Frank in his perfect tuxedo, Dean with that lazy smile, Sammy dancing for the cameras, Peter Lawford looking like he belonged in a magazine, Joey Bishop cracking jokes nobody could hear over the screaming. The crowd surged against the barriers. Women wept. Men shouted. Children held up autograph books they would never get close enough to use. The Rat Pack smiled for every camera, the perfect picture of Hollywood cool, the American dream in 5 tailored suits. 3 days after the premiere, a memo landed on J. Edgar Hoover's desk in Washington. Subject Sinatra, Francis Albert. Operation Casino Watch. Final report. 8 weeks of surveillance concluded. No evidence of criminal intent obtained. Recommend closing file and reassigning personnel to higher priority operations. But attached to the official report was a handwritten note from the Las Vegas field office. Unsigned. Unofficial. The kind of note that never made it into the permanent record. Director. The agent had whispered into his dictation machine before writing it down. If they wanted to do it, they could. They have the plan. They have the access. They have the nerve. They have relationships with people who could fence the take within 24 hours. We just can't prove they have the intention. Watching a man think about a crime isn't the same as watching him commit one. But for what it's worth, I've never seen anyone think about it harder. The answer wasn't in any file. It wasn't in the surveillance photos or the wiretap transcripts. It was in the space between what they saw and what they couldn't prove. Hoover read the note twice. Then he wrote 2 words in the margin. Keep watching. The casinos didn't sue. The FBI didn't arrest anyone. The movie didn't get banned. But something changed. Within 6 months, every major casino in Las Vegas had upgraded their security systems. New vaults, new alarms, new protocols for guard rotations, millions of dollars spent on improvements that the FBI couldn't explain to the press. The Nevada Gaming Commission issued new regulations about security theater, making sure customers saw armed guards and visible cameras. Deterrence, they called it. Nobody said why. Nobody had to. Raymond Holt retired from the Flamingo in 1962, just 2 years after Ocean's 11 premiered. He was 53 years old, too young to retire, too old to care about the questions people asked. He couldn't forget what he saw on those late nights. The chairman's fingers on the vault. The questions that weren't questions. Frank's shadow standing in the doorway, watching everything. When journalists came calling, he always said the same thing. Great movie, very educational. He died in 1987. His memoirs were never published. His family said he burned them himself, page by page in the fireplace of his Palm Springs home. Some stories are better left untold, his daughter explained to a reporter who came asking questions. Dad knew which ones. But the film made $5.5 million at the box office. Adjusted for inflation, that's 55 million tautadinayas. A massive success by any measure. And yet the real profit wasn't in ticket sales, it was in knowing exactly how to rob 5 casinos in one night, and having the whole world think you were just making a movie. The Sands Hotel was demolished in 1996. The implosion took less than 30 seconds. Decades of history, Sinatra's shows, Dean's jokes, Sammy's dance numbers, the poker games that lasted until dawn, reduced to a cloud of dust and rubble. The Venetian stands there now. Gondola rides and shopping malls and tourists taking selfies where the Rat Pack once ruled the night. But if you know where to look, there's a small plaque near the service entrance, a photograph behind scratched glass. It shows 5 men in suits, squinting in the Las Vegas sunlight. Frank, Dean, Sammy, Peter, Joey, a place in the sun, the caption reads. It doesn't mention Ocean's 11. It doesn't mention the FBI. It doesn't mention the blueprint that was never returned. We all watch heist movies and root for the criminals. We sit in dark theaters and imagine ourselves as the clever ones, the ones who beat the system, the ones who walk away with the money while the alarms blare behind us. We all fantasize about the perfect score, the one job that sets us up for life, the one moment of daring that proves we're smarter than everyone who plays by the rules. We all want to believe that somewhere, somehow, someone actually pulled it off, and we all assume Hollywood is pretend, that the line between fiction and reality is thick and clear, that when someone says it's just a movie, they mean it. Frank Sinatra never robbed a casino. He didn't need to, he owned part of one. Dean Martin never stole anything. He didn't need to, he was the highest paid entertainer in Las Vegas. Sammy never ran from the law. Peter never cracked a safe. Joey never drove the getaway car. They didn't commit the crime, but they proved it could be done, and sometimes that's enough. The blueprints were never returned to the casinos. The set designer, Howard Paulson, asked about them once, 3 weeks after production wrapped. Frank said they were lost in production. He said it with that smile, the one that meant the conversation was over. They weren't lost, they were in a safe deposit box in Palm Springs, next to a silver lighter, and a handwritten list of guard rotation times, next to a photograph of the Copa room taken at 3 a.m. Dean knew. He never said anything, because some secrets are better kept between friends, and some jokes are better left unexplained. Power isn't about money. Not really. The Rat Pack had more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes. Power isn't about fame either. Their faces were on every magazine cover in America. Power is about knowing you could do something, and choosing not to, or letting everyone believe you chose not to. Remember the blueprint. Remember the vault they filmed 17 times. Remember the man who whispered, "We make movies, Frank, that's all we do." And remember, Frank Sinatra said, "Forget the movie, let's pull the job." He was joking, probably. Ain't that a kick in the head?